Chodesh Tov, everybody.
Kodesh Tov, Kavod Harav, how are you?
Baruch Hashem, thank you. Okay, we'll get started. Okay. Right, so we're going in here now to the Zugot, which is a very interesting discussion. Okay, so let's get into that. Oh, okay, found it. So it says here, yeah, so it says, Garcinan beperek arve psachim, right? It says over there in Psachim, lo yochal adam teren velo ishte teren. Okay, so, right, so it says in the Talmud that a person shouldn't eat tren, right? Which we call in Hebrew zugot. What does that mean? Pairs. Or you can call it couples, right? What does that mean? Like even numbers, of something. Even numbers, then we have odd numbers, right? So even numbers is not good to drink or eat. So I'll give you an example, right? To make you understand a little bit. Don't drink like, 2 cups of wine or, right? Something like that, right? Or 2 glasses of, something else, right? Liquor, whatever. And also don't eat like two, two things. So two is no good, right? Meaning even numbers. Two and multiples of two. Right? That's what it says. Right? So why is that? Because of danger, right? So in those days, right, apparently there was danger involved in this. Right? Today, by the way, we don't really care, right? You see, nobody observes this, nobody cares about it, nobody's scared of it. Why is that? So we're going to see, right, that it says in the Tosot that these things don't exist anymore. These powers, of impurity, they came from even numbers, don't exist anymore in our times. So there are certain things, by the way, as a trend, there is a trend like that, which is that there are certain things which they were very well, they're very, very afraid of in the Talmud. And nowadays, we're not afraid of them. We're not concerned about them. So this is one of them, There's also other things. I'm not going to get into all the examples, right? But let's just focus in on this one. So let's see what Bet Yosef says about this. So says Bet Yosef, he brings a page, right? In Psachim, Kuf Tet Amud Bet. כלומר, שבאותו זמן האוכל זוגות, right? It says in those times, if a person ate, even numbers, right? Couples, right? Whatever you want to call them, right? Or שותה זוגות, or drink like that, היה בא לידי סכנה, it would be danger for him. ומיהו, however, it says כתבו תוספות בפרק כל הבשר, says תוספות חולין ק"ז עמוד ב', והעידנא לא כפתינן בהכי, so it says we're not particular about this anymore. לפי שאין סכנה מצויה לבוא בזמן הזה על ידי כך. So he says nowadays, right, there's no danger in these things. Okay, so then he moves on. So says Bet Yosef regarding this, ולכן לא ידעתי למה לא כתבו רבי. So he says, you know what? Therefore, I don't really know why the Tur didn't didn't bother to mention this Tosfot. He just brought down, the prohibition, but he didn't bring down Tosfot. So, okay. So he says, if his intention was to argue with Tosfot, and not to accept his opinion, ולומר, גם בזמן הזה יש להיזהר בכך, that we should be careful also in our times regarding this. היה לו לכתוב כל החילוקים שנאמרו בגמרא בעניין זה. So then he should have mentioned, right, all the parameters that were said about this in the Talmud. So you see from there, right, that something is a little bit fishy here, right? What does that mean? That the Tur just neglected this, Tosfot, like it doesn't exist, as if. Meaning what? That, whether you agree with it or not, if you agree with it, right, so then mention it. If you don't agree with it, just say, you don't agree, right? Then, and go through the motions of that. So either way, right, didn't come out so understood, right? What's going on here with the Tur. But nevertheless, right, regardless of the fact that the Tur didn't mention it, we do hold by this Tosfot, and therefore this is the reason why we're not particular about this in our times. Okay, so let's go to the Shulchan Aruch. So it says here, oh, for some reason, okay, you know what it is? There you go, right? This is the proof is in the pudding. Meaning what? That the Shulchan Aruch doesn't even mention this at all. So why is that? Because in our times doesn't exist. That's why. So from there you see, right, where he holds by this, which side he falls into here, which category. Okay, there you go, right? So it doesn't even bring it. So in other words, for our purposes, this prohibition, whatever, this danger, right, is non-existent, and therefore we don't even talk about it. That's the bottom line. Okay, very good. So let's move on. Before we go, right, Shulchan Aruch, we have to see, maybe there's more Bet Yosef there. I thought that was the... actually, you know what? There was Shulchan Aruch here from something we said before, last week, right? And I'll show you what that is. So we said here, right, אין מסתכלים בפני האוכל או בפנתו שלא לביישו, right? So, yeah, so we did mention this last week, but, right, I'm not sure if we read the Shulchan Aruch. So it says in Shulchan Aruch, actually we did, we read it, and then we said we're going to finish it with Yosef, so, okay, whatever. But anyway, I'll read it again, just in case, because some of you were not here last week, so it's good to, right, it's good to hear it again. So, or hear it for the first time, whatever it is, right? So it says over here that when a person, the proper manners, proper etiquette is that when a person is eating, you shouldn't look at him or his plate, right? The food that he's eating, Why is that? Because you're embarrassing him, So a person should be careful about that. Okay, very good. So I mean, if a person who who's intelligent will figure this out by himself. But when you're told by the Torah, right, it takes on already a different dimension, right? Whatever. So there you go, right? The Torah is telling you have proper manners and don't stare at them when they eat, neither at them or at their food. Okay, great. So let's move on to the next one. So this halakha is also quite important, and also it's quite a revelation for some people, who think that they're the boss, and they can control everything, and right, they can go to somebody's house, and become take control there. But this is not the proper attitude according to Judaism. So let's look at that. So it says here, yeah, we got to see the Torah inside. That's where it is. Yep. So it says here, Grasina Masechet Derech Eretz, right? So it says over there in Masechet Derech Eretz, right? By the way, some people don't know, right, that there is a tractate of the Talmud called Derech Eretz, right, which means proper manners. So over there it teaches you proper table manners as well. That's what we're talking about over here. So it says over here, Anichnas bait kol mashi amar lo balabait yaseh maseh. So it says, right, when you go to somebody's house as a guest, follow the instructions of the host. That is the proper manners. So what else do we have here? Yeah, so I think he brings some more stuff here. Maseh Rabbi Shimon ben Antipras. So there's a story he brings regarding this, right? The rabbi. Shenichnasu orchim etzlo. So what happened? Right? Some guests came to visit him. V'gazar lehen sheochlu ve'ishtu. So he told them, he decreed upon them, I want you to eat and drink. Right? והיו נודרים ועבדים והילקה אותם. Oh boy. Right, so he says, right, that apparently, right, they kind of like refused to do this, right? And what did he do? He punished them, right? He lashed them, whatever, something like that. So we'll see exactly what this language means, right? What he did to them and what they did to him. I'm not really, the language is not so clear. So let's look at the Beit Yosef, right, and see who hit who, right? Right? We'll see who got hit. Okay, we'll see what happened here. Right, so it says here, it just brings a place. In Derech Eretz Zuta, Peg Dalid. So he doesn't really explain this whole story here, what happened over there, but let's see Shulchan Aruch how he explains this, right? And we'll try to figure it out, whatever. Right. So it says very simply, right? The Shulchan Aruch, Hanichlas lebait. If you go into somebody's house, call Mashiyomar lo balabait yaser, right? Whatever he tells you to do, the hosts, do it. Right. So, by the way, does that mean what if he tells you to do a sin, what you do a sin also? Right? No, it's not talking about that, right? Obviously, right? It's talking about something just in terms of his will, his whims. Like in other words, follow his program, right? Go according to his program there. So interesting, right? I want to see what here the Mishnah Berurah says about this. Maybe some interesting points here. uh, he brings here something nice. So he says, right, that even if he tells you to do something, right, and he's being a little bit bossy, right, a little dominant, right, he's dominating you, right. So you may think, that I don't want to listen to this guy, right. He's being too bossy. So he says, you know what, but because of try to humble yourself. Biken Yaset, right? So he brings us from Tosfot. That's what Tosfot says. And so there you go. That's a good point there. Yeah, he's being like kind of like a, slave driver, kind of whatever, but try to follow his program if you can. Okay.
Kabbalah Harav, but if you're in somebody else's house, you're in like their domain, their territory, so you have no choice,
Right.
right?
Yeah, I mean, you have a choice. You can be rebellious like those guys, right? We saw, right? You know what I mean? And try to take control over his house. Right? But this is not Syria, you know what I mean? So you can't just make a revolution, you know what I mean?
Mm.
You have to be careful.
Well, that would be too much of a chutzpah, no?
Right, exactly. That's the whole point. So don't be chutzpah. Follow the program. Okay. And then, right, ואם הרוח נוהג זה פרישות בדבר, says Mishnah Berurah, furthermore, what about, if the host is like kind of like very pious, the pious guy. So he does all kinds of pious things. You're not on that level to do that stuff. Uh, so he says there, you're not really obligated to listen to him. He says, לעבור, לבעל הבית לעבור, אבל דבר שהוא פרישות בעלמא, שום צריך איסור, אינו מחויב. Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, so let's get this straight, what he's saying here. Very interesting. Okay, let me just make sure I'm telling you the right thing here. Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, I wasn't reading it right. So let me just reiterate that. Okay, make sure I tell you the right way. What he's saying is like this, right? Let's say I I didn't say I said it the opposite way. So he says like this, right? Let's say the guest comes over, right, to the host, and and the guest happens to be, somewhat pious, right? So the question is, should he do that piety that he does at home when he goes to somebody else's house? Um, so he says, right, that regarding something like that, he's not obligated to listen to the host, especially when there's, some kind of concern, for prohibition there. But he says, on the other hand, if he's doing something like which is totally pious, so then he really shouldn't do that in front of the host. So again, right, the point is like this: if you're doing something where it's like sort of like piety, but there's a concern about prohibition there. That's why he's being pious about it. So there he says, you don't have to listen to him because there's a concern, that you may come to do some prohibition. But when it comes to something which is like totally pious, so there, right, you don't have to listen to him. I'm sorry, you shouldn't do that in front of him. That's what I'm saying, right? Because you're kind of like you're doing something which is not necessary. So you're not following his program, right? Basically, that's what he's saying. Okay, whatever, right? That's an interesting point, but the truth is, right? According to Shulchan Aruch, he's pretty much saying like do everything he does, whatever, So of course, obviously you shouldn't do a sin. Bottom line, right? You're not going to do a sin for anybody, right? No, not for your hosts and not for anybody else for that matter, right? Whoever asks you to do a sin. So that's very clear. But try to humble yourself and go with the program. Okay, that's one thing. Let's see what else we got here. Okay. There's also here Bira Lachad. Just want to see what he says there. Okay, whatever. Nothing major. So anyway, that's a good piece of advice because it'll save you from a lot of problems when you humble yourself, when you're in somebody else's domain. So now getting back to what the tour said, right? That was quite a he brought this Masechet Derech Eretz. That was quite harsh language there that he used from that tractate there. So I wanted to see if we can get a clear reading of what it's saying because I think there's a lot to learn from that point there, from that story. Well, basically, right, according to the simple meaning of here, of what he's saying is that he told them to eat, right, and drink, and they started, apparently, you know what they did? They started to abstain, basically, right, from this, like, as if like, well, yeah, we won't do that, like, whatever, refusing with right with vehemence. So once he saw that, right, he got angry and he, I guess, right, it says he lashed them, which is very shocking, right? How did he lash them for that? That's quite a thing there. Um, so apparently, right, according to this, he felt that they were liable to being lashed because they're not doing the will of the host. Quite shocking. That is a shock. Yeah, try doing that today, right? Let's see what results you're going to get with that one.
What about if the host requests that you drive to Shabbat to their house to do services there?
Right. So, as I said, right, you don't have to do a sin because of, whatever, right? That's for sure.
Yeah.
Talking about that, right?
He wants to think I don't know where he gets it from. He thinks that it's arguably okay.
No, it's not okay to do a sin, but
No, to drive on Shabbat and to do it in front of people is a sin, yeah?
so what he's saying is like this, right? When it comes to just, conduct, right? Not sins, but just conduct to follow the
Right.
program, right? That there you should do what he says. Okay. Well, the truth is I would like to, look up this tractate and see the commentaries there, but I'm afraid that I'm going to take too much of your time, so maybe I'll look it up later and I'll get back to you on this tomorrow. I just want to make sure we got some commentary going on there. Okay, whatever. I'm not going to go too crazy with this now. Just to finalize, right, to sum up this idea, it's like this, that the host is telling you to eat now, and you are saying, you know what, gee whiz, like I think I'm gonna skip this meal. Apparently, right, you shouldn't do that. You know what I mean? That's pretty much what we see here. Okay, or things like that, right? So, things similar. Okay, that is an interesting concept. So then he moves on, right? Let's move on. Says the Torah, Lo yadam kafdan b'seudato, right? Another thing is, he says, right, don't be, now from the vantage point of the host, so he says, right, like, don't be too, right, particular about everything, during the meal. That's interesting. So, right, perhaps it's a little bit of a contradiction to what we said before. But anyway, let's see how the Beit Yosef explains that. So it brings a story also over here. I like these stories. Okay, so anyway, right? He says here in the Beit Yosef, Gam zeh sham mesayin ba maaseh be'Hillel HaZaken. So he brings a story from Hillel, right? שעשה סעודה לאדם אחד, like he made a סעודה for one person, ובא עני וישב על פתחו. Oh, okay, so what happened, right? He made, he brought a guest over, right, to make him a סעודה. So comes a poor guy, right, and sitting by the door, אמר, אישה, אני צריך להכניס היום, ואין לי פרנסה כלום. Look what he says, right? This poor guy. He says, listen, I'm doing a marriage today, right? Probably means he's getting married, whatever, or something like that. And he says, I don't have money, please, give me a donation for my wedding, something like that. The Seudat Nisuin, for the Seuda, אז נטלה אשתו כל הסעודה היא, ונתנה לו. So look what he says, right? That Hillel's wife went, she took all the food and gave it to that person who was doing the wedding. Right? ואחר כך לשתה אישה אחרת ובשתה, right? אילפס אחר. So then what did she do, right? She gave all the food to this guy. And then she made another meal, for Hillel and his friend. וואו, הוא בא וניחתו לפניהם, אמר לה, ביתי, אף אני לא דנתי אותך לכף חובה, אלא לכף זכות, שכל המעשים שעשית לי, לא עשית אלא לשם שמיים. So it says, right, Hillel, to this, lady, he says, I know whatever you did for the sake of heaven, so he says, I'm not going to judge you, right? So I guess he means to say, right, that, like, you had to make another meal, and that took time, so we had to wait. But, tells her, listen, I don't mind because, I know what you did was for the sake of heaven. So you see from here that Hillel was not very particular, right? He was trying to be very generous, right, and liberal, right, with his food and right, his seudah, all that stuff. Okay, there you go. Nice. So Hillel tells her, right, like I judged you favorably, because I know what you did was for the sake of heaven. So I'm not angry at you that you took our food and gave it to somebody else. Oh boy. All right. Incredible. That's an interesting story. So let's see Shulchan Aruch on that. That's Vav. That was the good old days when men were men, Oh boy. That's something. These stories are very inspirational. Okay. So it says here, Shulchan Aruch, Lo Yadam Kafdan, right? Right, Baseuda. So look what it says, right? Again, right, reiterating, a person should not be particular in his house. So he explains over here, right? What does it mean particular, right? Don't get angry and, don't lose your temper. Oh, right. That's the thing, That's what we're learning from Hillel, right? Even though she gave all his food away, he didn't lose his temper. He didn't say, "Hey, what did you do? You took my food." He could have let it go, right? He could have let out some screams, some right, whatever. But he didn't do that, right? He stayed calm. Not only that, he forgave her, right, and all that stuff. And so you want to be like this, right? You want to emulate his ways. You want to emulate the ways of Hillel. That's what it's all about. All right, that's a nice story. I like that one. Okay, I'm inspired myself. All right, good lesson from that one. But also I have to tell you, right, that this story bears out some, very important rule or whatever principle, which is that, you got to be very humble, in your lifestyle. And don't think you're some kind of a, right, Oriental, monarch, right, potentate, whatever, right? Yeah, you're just a regular guy, things didn't go the way you wanted, so don't lose your temper and start going crazy, like letting the steam out, from your ears. You gotta be humble, be humble. And people will, tend to do things against your will, and they won't do what you wanted or you expected, especially your wife, right? Your significant other that you have at home will oftentimes, do things which are not going your way. you know so don't get angry, and upset, and start, ranting and raving like a lunatic, right? Instead, what you should do is chill out, right? Be forgiving, be humble. You should know that everything came from Hashem, whatever happened. So, this is a great, if a person can reach this level, right, he's already, on a plateau, right? For sure, there's no question. And it's the truth is, right? It's a matter of fact, right, that Hillel was known for his humility in all, types of scenarios. He wouldn't lose his temper, right? He would stay calm, he would stay humble, and that's the hallmark of a great leader, great rabbi, right? The great, saintly man. And so there's a lot to learn from this little thing, Uh, God bless them. God bless them. These great people. All right, there you go. So yeah, we have more time. Maybe we can do another one. Why not? So okay, this is also a short one. So it says here the tour, lo yochal adam prusaka betza, right? So what does that mean? You shouldn't, eat, right, a piece of bread which is the size of an egg. So why is that? Because it's considered to be like a gargeran, right? What is gargeran? He's a, what do you call it, a heavy eater, right? He eats like too much, like in one time. So we have to see how that applies, right? So he brings here Bet Yosef the source for this, right? Sham lo yochaz prusa kebetza biado bepam echad ve'osek ken harazig ravtan, right? So it says there also on Derech Eretz, right? Over there in that same tractate, that a person shouldn't hold a piece of bread, right, which is the size of the egg, because right in one shot, because he looks like he's a Ravtan, right? Which is a glutton, right? This is gluttony. That's what it is. Umashma milashon habraita she'im ochez prusa kebetza afal pi she'eno ochel. So it says there, right? Apparently, right, implies there that even if he doesn't eat it, just the fact that he holds it, elaktzat mimena nikra Ravtan. He's still called glutton. V'kach tzarich lefaresh divrei Rabbeinu. So what is it telling you, right? Basically, when you take a piece of bread, right? Take small pieces, right? We're gonna see, right? Also, taking too small is also not good, right? Less than a kazite, and not more than a bitzah, right? Not more than an egg. So, in other words, you want to be between, the olive size and the egg size, right? That's where you want to be with bread. Otherwise, it looks like you are a glutton. Why is that, by the way? What's the reason why? Because that means you're going to swallow a whole piece of bread the size of an egg, right? Which is not, proper. Why? Because it's too large. Like to eat like that. Each time, you swallow a piece of bread, it's going to be larger than an egg. That's gluttony. That's what he's saying. So take a small piece. But the thing is that nowadays, right, we have this like sandwich, right, culture, in America or whatever, everywhere. So we take a sandwich, right? So the truth is, a sandwich does have more than an egg size. Your typical sandwich, right? But the truth is that so then what? It's not really proper to eat like that. That's what you pretty much see. Okay, well, I guess the halacha is not into the sandwich culture. What can I tell you? I think that some rabbis may tell you here that it's okay. Why? Because now it's like accustomed to eat like that. So it's okay. It's not really considered to be gluttony. That's just the way people eat today. But I'll tell you honestly, it's probably better to avoid this. In any case, uh, because since the Torah said so, that try to avoid it. Don't say, it's culture. What culture? That's not the Torah culture. You know what I mean? So don't do it. That's a more proper way to look at it. Okay, so then he says, furthermore, right? So this is exactly talking about the sandwich over here, because he says if you're holding a large piece, right, and you're only eating a little bit of it, which is like a sandwich, exactly. He says still not proper. So therefore, right, try to avoid eating sandwiches. Okay, I tell you. Okay. It may be American culture, but it's not Jewish culture. What can I say?
Maybe cut your sandwich into like quarters.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what you should do. Break it off. Or cut it. Into little pieces. Eat it like that. That's probably the. You can also break it with your hands. That's also good. It's okay. But don't like hold it, and put it in your mouth, with a large piece like that, right? That doesn't look proper to do it like that. That is funny. Okay. So let's see. Shulchan Aruch, right? Lo yochal adam prusa kebetza, right? As we said, right? Don't eat like a large piece, like an egg size. If he did, he's considered to be a glutton. Okay. What else can I say? Yeah, maybe we can try one more, one more for the road. One more for the road. Here we go. So, yeah, this is also another good one. Another good one. Hits the spot, this one. So it says like this, right? Velo yishte koso bebat echad, right? Another thing is he tells you don't drink, right? When you're drinking, like don't drink the whole cup in one shot. Right? I remember in my younger days, when we were like kids, I had a friend, like he would take the whole cup, like 12 ounce and like chuck it down, in one shot. And I thought that was pretty impressive. I was like, wow, this guy's impressive, oh boy, you know. So let's see, right, what it says about that in the Beit Yosef here. Masechet Derech Eretz. This also comes from Derech Eretz, right? Zuta Pei Dalet, Perek Dalet, Rabba Pei Vav, Perek Vav. The Ite So Perek Kitzat Solin. It's also some Psachim there. Pei Vav Amud Bet, Upek and Tzadin also in Betza. Wow. Kafe. So several places we have that. Kafe Amud Bet. וגרסינן בסוף פרק כיצד צולין, רבי שמעון ברבי יוסי יקלע לבי רבי שמעון. Another story, right? I love these stories, right? These stories are really good. Lots of excitement over here. So what happened, right? That Rabbi Ishmael, son of Rabbi Yossi, happened to be right at the house of Rabbi Shimon ben Rabbi Yosef ben Lakunia, right? Another guy. Yavun le kasa kible bechad zimna. Right. So what happened? They gave him a cup of wine, right? Whatever, or a cup it says, right? And yeah. So what did he do, right? He chugged it down in one slurp, right? Oh, Amele. So I told him. לא סבא לה מורה שותה כוסו בבת אחד הרי זה גרגנן. So they told him, right, well, haven't you ever heard about this lesson, we learned that you're considered to be a glutton if you drink like that? אמר לו, לא אמרו כי בכוסך קטן, ואין לך מתוק וכרסה רחב. So it tells him, it doesn't apply in this case, he says. Why is that? So it says, because your cups are very small, number one, right? And also your wine is sweet. And also, right, he says, I have a good appetite, like in other words, I'm a pretty, heavy duty drinker, whatever. So, right, he tells them, it doesn't really apply in this case. That's what he answers them. So, hey, let's see if we can see Shulchan Aruch, what it says about that. We're going to sort this out, right? Make sure we got the right idea here, got the right orientation. Yeah, so it says Shulchan Aruch like this. Lo yishte koso bebat echad, right? He shouldn't drink his cup in one shot. But if he does so, he's considered to be a glutton, right? So he says then, what's the proper way to do it? So he says shnayim derech eretz, right? The proper way is to take 2 sips from the cup, not to drink it in one sip. Right? That's the proper way. If he takes 3 sips, he says it's considered to be like conceited, In other words, he's like being too, too soft, right? Too gentle, whatever, right? Conceit. So therefore, right, the proper thing, be in the middle, Don't take 1 sip, don't take 3 sips, but take 2. So the Ramah brings down what we just mentioned, right? He brings over here. But he says if it's a small cup, right, as we said, he can do it in one shot, right? It's a small cup. V'chen gadol maros is also it's very big. He says b'shlosha arba. You can do 3-4 times. 4 sips, whatever. Right? That's not a problem. So it depends on the size of the cup. That's also right an important thing to understand. So what is the normal size here? Apparently, right, there will be a revi'it, which is 3 ounces. That's like a normal, I guess, whatever. I don't know. It's hard to really say. Maybe 5 ounces. Definitely not 12. That's not your order. That's not your ordinary cup. I don't know. The truth is, I'm just conjecturing here. Right? Let's see what the Mishnah Berurah says. Maybe he has a better idea what's going on here. Let's see what he says. Okay, okay, 1 second. Mishnah Berurah. He says the same thing as Magen Abraham. Okay, that's something else. He's talking about something. Let's see what else we got. The truth is, I saw in one of the books, he writes there regarding this halacha that it applies really to wine, not to water. When you're drinking, because in those days with meals, they used to drink wine. That was like their Coca-Cola. So that's what they're really talking about. They're not talking about drinking water. It kind of makes sense, to say it like that. Because when you're drinking wine, right, you're not really supposed to drink a lot in one shot. It's considered to be like, you're like a heavy drinker, right? Sort of like alcoholic kind of thing, right? So that's why we don't want that kind of thing. But when you're drinking water, right, who really cares? What difference does it make? So, but the truth is, I don't see this in the Mishnah Berurah. Let's see what else we got here. Yeah, so the truth is, he brings down here that it could also be like, like beer. That would also, be the same thing. Yeah, so the truth is, they're talking more like, these alcoholic beverages, and that's pretty much what they're saying here. But the truth is, it's not really compelling that that's the case. Yeah, I'm gonna tell you. That's interesting. Let's see if there's any more commentary here. Yeah, I think, the simple meaning here is talking about wine and stuff like that, liquor or right or beer, things like this. You know what? Let me just take a look at Yalkut Yosef and then we'll see, right, what he says about that. Good idea. No, doesn't hurt. Kuf Ein. Let's see. Take a quick look. See what he says about that. Doesn't even mention it. Doesn't talk about it. Oh no, this is the wrong chapter. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Let's see one more time. So I want to read this to you because it's talking here about this issue about going to somebody's house. You have to do like what he tells you, right? Whatever. So regarding that, he says here, if a person goes into a person's house, right? Maybe I should bring up the screen for you, so you can see it. Because I don't want you to think I'm cheating you here. Putting on some fake stuff. So I want to give you the real thing. So you should feel it yourself. Okay, so here it is, right? Yalkut Yosef. It says, you go into your friend's house, right? You have to do whatever the host tells you. Look what it says, right? If he tells you to eat, right? As long as there's nothing, it's all kosher, right? Of course, black kosher. You have to listen to him, he says, right? So if he gives you, some foods, some hors d'oeuvres, right? Don't say, oh, I don't want, thank you. Eat something, it tells you to eat. ומשעת דרך ארץ שימתין עד שיחזור לבקש ממנו. ואם האורח נוהג להחמיר באיזה דבר שעושה חיסור, רשאי להחמיר, right, so he says, as we said in the Mishnah Berurah, right, that if he tends to be stringent about something which there's a concern about prohibition, there he's allowed to. But if it's totally piety, right, so then you should not do that, right? Okay, that's exactly like the Mishnah Berurah. So he's bringing the Mishnah Berurah here, but regarding what we said, right, about the size, let's see what he says about that. Look what he says. Oh my God. So he says, right, that it doesn't really apply to us, this thing. Why is that? Because he says, that our wines are not strong. Yeah, so in other words, I guess this would only apply to a nice strong wine, right? Like Cabernet, right? And stuff like Merlot, right? The strong wines, But you're just like your basic, right? Bubble, right? Bubble gum kind of wine, right? That we drink, the weak stuff, right? So it wouldn't apply to that, he says. So you see from there, right? Definitely does not apply to water. Definitely does not apply to to soda, like soft drinks and stuff like that, right? Not talking about that. Okay, very good. So I guess we'll stop there. I kept you long enough, right? Right? I kept you in jail long enough. So now, right, you're free to go. And Bezat Hashem, we'll be back here tomorrow. Thanks for coming. Be blessed with wealth and health and happiness. Right? We should all be in the Torah jail. That's the best jail to be in. So we'll see you. Chazak Baruch Laila Tov.
Thank you so
much. Coming. God bless. All the best. Chodesh Tov.
much.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Baruch.